Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. My name is Deb Hodgson, and I am a co-founder of New Hampshire for Safe Technology. And if you aren't familiar with me, I'll just give you a quick little background. In the fall of 2017, my husband and I had planned a trip, and we planned to have our house measured for radio frequency because I was coming off of blood thinners and I was aware that it can thicken the blood. So I thought, well, that seems like a prudent thing to do. I had also been having issues with insomnia, ringing in the ears, heart arrhythmia, palpitations, tooth and jaw pain, dry eye, facial flushing, dizziness, and blood pressure. I had developed severe pressure headaches that felt like my brain was swollen. I had difficulty thinking, speaking, and remembering. I even got lost several times in the town I've lived in for nearly 40 years. I did not yet know it was all related until we removed the wireless from our home and cars. My health quickly improved. My seemingly unrelated symptoms disappeared as well. Interestingly, the plant in my kitchen that had sat there doing nothing for over a year suddenly grew 15 inches in just 2 months. That was an eye opener to everyone in my family because it's clearly much easier to believe what you can actually see.
Wow.
Realizing this is an issue that ultimately affects everyone, I stepped way out of my comfort zone, despite knowing others will most certainly think I must be crazy, and I reached out to legislators. My state rep, Patrick Abrami, was truly exceptional. He actually listened and responded. He investigated the science and was successful getting New Hampshire to pass the first US law to begin addressing technology safety. And the New Hampshire Commission on Health and Environmental Effects of Wireless Technology was established in the fall of 2019 and produced a groundbreaking report in the fall of 2020. The New Hampshire Commission report is a great place to become informed, to empower you to protect yourself, your family, and community by becoming aware and learning how to use technology safely. Right now, New Hampshire Bill 1644 is in study committee. It's one of the recommendations from the commission report about establishing setbacks from residences, schools, parks, etc. So we are hoping for something good to come of that this fall. Right now, I'd like to introduce you to a fabulous friend. New Hampshire from Safe Tech is very grateful to Cece Doucette of Massachusetts for Safe Technology. A little background about Cece. She helped her children's schools become the first in the nation to take precautionary measures with wireless technology. She's the director of Massachusetts for Safe Technology and works with schools, communities, municipalities, and legislatures to address wireless radiation and public health. She's also the Education Services Director with the international nonprofit Wireless Education, which offers affordable 30-minute online training for schools and families and corporate safety instruction. Cece was honored to co-chair the technology panel for the Health in Buildings Roundtable Conference at the National Institute of Health and to present state and local policy at the International EMF Medical Conference 2021. She's been featured on Genius of Wellness, Boston 25 News, PBS, EMF Warriors, and EMF Summits with Lloyd Burrell, Josh Del Sol, and Patrick Vanderberg, and in the films Generation Zapped and Wi-Fi Refugees. Cece has been a tireless supporter for New Hampshire, and we are very grateful to her. Welcome, Cece.
Thank you so much, Deb. I'm so honored to be here with you again tonight. It's really our privilege to be able to do all of this information sharing with the general public. So for everybody who's joined us tonight, thank you for taking the time. And if what we teach tonight resonates with you, we'll be sending out the slides that I'm going to show you in just a minute. And, dig down deep, go look in and see what the science is telling us, what other communities are doing, and what you can be inspired by to start these conversations with your own towns, with your own schools, your loved ones, and your colleagues, and then bring them back. We plan to do these webinars live for quite some time so that there's always a place to come with up-to-date information to help you help yourself and your community. So with that, I would like to really thank our co-hosts from New Hampshire for Safe Technology. Deb is with us tonight, and we're so grateful. And she really is the catalyst behind what happened in New Hampshire with the first law of the land to investigate this. And then she's also partners with Jennifer White and Lori Schreier of New Hampshire for Safe Technology, and they rotate in on who's co-hosting with this. So to all of them, none of us ever imagined in a million years we'd have to give our time to this topic, but we're so very grateful for all the amazing people who find the courage to, like Deb said, come out of your comfort zone and do something, because there is no cavalry coming. We have got to build this up at the grassroots level and use our voices, and thank goodness for the incredible resources we have today. So what I'm going to do is a screen share to my slides. Okay, let me put this in slide view mode. It just takes a sec. Okay, Deb, can you give me a nod if you can see that okay? Okay, great, thank you. So these slides again will be available following our presentation when we send out the video. As the video is put up on YouTube, we include the link in the description to these slides. So everything in my slides that has an underline in it, you'll be able to drill down to the facts that back up the statements that we're making. So this MTPW after my name just means I had the privilege of earning a master's in technical and professional writing from Northeastern University, following my bachelor's in communication studies. And I love that I get to use both of those skill sets for the work that I'm doing towards safe technology today. Who knew this is where I would land, but at least I'm glad I'm using my degrees. So as Deb mentioned, I helped my schools become the first in the nation to even have this little sign hanging in our classrooms with baby steps for precautionary measures. Turn off the wireless devices when not in use. Turn the Wi-Fi on only when it's needed. Right now, the industry gives us everything, all Wi-Fi all the time, blowing full blast. And we don't need that. We want to now start scaling back and only using wireless when we absolutely need it on the go. And always place the mobile device on a solid surface, not on your body. And when I was a little kid, my mom used to tell me, stand back from that television. Well, we didn't have digital technology back then, but the electric and magnetic field from the TV screen was strong enough that it was overpowering to our own biological electromagnetic field. So we've known something about this for a very long time, but certainly not what was happening in the digital space. So after we did this with our schools, we realized that they are still waiting for higher authorities to tell them what to do to actually protect the children. And so I worked with my senator, Karen Spilka, who is my senator in Ashland, Massachusetts. She's now our Senate president. And together we put together legislation back in 2014 that was introduced in 2015 to form a commission to bring the right minds together at the table at the state level and look at this issue and decide what it is that we should be doing. So that legislation was introduced in 2015, and I don't know what the deal is here in Massachusetts, but we seem to move like molasses. In the same conversations that we've been having here, we had with Deb's representative, Patrick Abrami, and within 7 months, we had a bill introduced, testified on, passed into law to investigate this issue. So we are so very grateful and so honored to support our friends in New Hampshire, because they are doing the hard work that has to be done to bring safe technology to our communities. And on this crazy journey, I've had the privilege of connecting with many of the world's leading scientists and doctors whose life's work is investigating wireless radiation and treating people who have become ill from it. So we have built this little nonprofit. We're in the midst of moving it from one platform to another, and it'll be back online in the coming weeks. but we literally have distilled this huge issue down to little tiny courses that can be completed in about a half an hour online. We have one for schools and families and one for the corporate workplace. So for the first 2 years that I was doing my investigation, I was the only person I could talk to about this. Nobody in my schools knew about it. Nobody in my town knew about it. At the time, we had a town manager who was a former fighter pilot, and he shared with me that our government still checks in with him to see if he's had any fallout later in years from the radiation he was exposed to up in the plains. So he was about the only person who had any clue that there was something to be concerned about with man-made wireless radiation. And I just want to share a few different terms. So we hear this radiation called a few different things. One is radio frequency radiation. Sometimes it's called microwave radiation. Sometimes it's called electromagnetic fields or EMFs. And it all means the same thing. This is man-made radiation that pulses at the megahertz range. That's 1 million cycles per second hitting our cells. In the gigahertz range, it's 1 billion cycles per second. And these are spiked erratic pulses of microwave radiation to carry our signals and then our data on top of those signals to get between our phones or our tablets or our Roku or our Chromecast, whatever it is that we're using, our wearables, and the nearest cell tower or router. So EMF, RF, and microwave radiation are all what we're addressing here tonight. I was so honored when somebody found my work down at the National Institutes of Health and contacted me and said, would you join us to co-chair the technology panel for the Health in Buildings Roundtable Conference down here at the NIH? And I said, you know, I'm not a PhD. And they said, that's okay. We appreciate the way you deliver information. So little me, I'm like the little Forrest Gump of the group here. I get to hang out with the really cool kids, the real scientists and doctors. But we got to go down to the National Institutes of Health. And for the first time at this Health and Buildings Roundtable Conference, we got to present to doctors, to our federal agencies, to hospitals, to urban planners and architects who are all addressing what does it take to have a safe environment inside our buildings. And for most of them, they had no idea that wireless technology was something we need to be paying attention to. So I like to share this link with folks to help establish credibility quickly. We were limited to 10 minutes or less each in these talks. And I did the opening remarks. We had Dr. Martin Pall, who's one of the world's leading scientists on this. We had Frank Clegg, who's the retired president of Microsoft Canada. He flew in to join us to give us the business perspective. And after figuring out what wireless technology was doing to us, Frank Clegg established Canadians for Safe Technology. And then Theodora Scarato, who's the executive director of the Environmental Health Trust, which arguably has the world's best database on the science, the medicine, and all sorts of policy action items that are happening around the world. Theodora joined us and talked about other countries and how they're addressing wireless radiation. So these are all good 10-minute videos that you are more than welcome to share with others to credibly open this conversation. And then one of the major gaps we had when I first started learning about this back in 2013 is that so many people were getting sick and so many people were getting misdiagnosed and continued to suffer. So we held the first EMF or electromagnetic fields medical conference in 2019 out in California with experts from all over North America, and some flew in from Europe to teach with us. And then in 2021, Elizabeth Kelly convened a second EMF medical conference, and she expanded it, and there are now 24.5 continuing medical education credits for doctors. And she went through a second protocol to get the nurses certified for this as well. So our nurses, our doctors, our first responders, and any other healthcare practitioners who need to have continuing medical education credits. They can get 24.5 from this conference. It has been recertified because in the pandemic, we had to pivot and take all this training online, and that conference material is as applicable today as it was in 2021. And they've gotten it reaccredited to run through May, I think it's May 17th of 2023. So if your doctors and your science and your first responders and your nurses and your other healthcare team members don't know about EMS, they can now get professional training. And I highly encourage everybody to provide the information to your healthcare practitioners, because they're likely not hearing this from anywhere else. So please join us there. I was honored to be one of the invited lecturers there. And I gave a talk on state and local policy. So that's my background. That's how I fell down the rabbit hole with this issue. And now I want to share with you what caused our schools to sit up and say, okay, we're going to begin taking precautionary measures. So for anybody who's with us tonight that has an iPhone, I would invite you to take that out and go into settings. Once you're in settings, scroll down just a little bit and hit general. On a really old phone, you'd go up to the top and hit about, but most people have upgraded. So from general, you go all the way down to the bottom, and second from the bottom, I think, is where you'll find legal and regulatory. Hit that, and from legal and regulatory, you'll see a little menu, and about 4 down, you'll see RF exposure. This is this radio frequency, microwave radiation, that they politely call energy in this legal fine print. What that legal fine print tells us is 2 really critical things. One, this device was tested at a distance from the body. So without being explicit, they're saying that if you put your cell phone up to your, your brain or your breast in your bra or your shirt pocket or suit pocket or your waistband or your back pocket, you are exceeding the FCC limits for public radiation exposure. And those limits were never tested for biological effects. They were only tested for how much heat in a half an hour from one device would it take to raise the temperature of your skin. That has nothing to do with what the radiation is doing to your brain or your heart or your lungs or your blood or all the rest of our biological systems. In the second paragraph, it says to use a hands-free option like speakerphone or a headset. Now, you don't want to use a headset or earbuds that has wire or metal in them. So those earbuds are wirelessly transmitting from this ear to this ear and then to your device. And that means microwave radiation going into your brain, back and forth, and then also into your body wherever you've got that cell phone or tablet or whatever you're using. And the message today certainly is not no technology, it's safe technology. And so we need to take a look at what the science tells us, what the risks are, and then what we can actually do to have amazing technology, but without radiating ourselves. So what they don't tell you in that fine print disclaimer is that one device of your cell phone now has at least 6 separate antennas that are individually, constantly pulsing microwave radiation for that handshake with the nearest cell tower going, here I am, where are you? Here I am, where are you? Here I am, where are you? And we don't need that. If you're not using the cellular antenna, turn it off. If you're not using the Wi-Fi, the Bluetooth, the locator, the hotspot, or the data, turn it off and only turn it on when you need it and only for as long as you think you need to have it on. And then turn everything off, keep things in airplane mode, and you will begin to reduce your exposures greatly. Our friends at the Environmental Health Trust have a really good website here called See the Fine Print, where you can see what other devices have in their fine print warnings. The iPads used to talk about the seizures, blackouts, and eye strain. We know children who have had their first seizures using an iPad as they're sitting there getting radiated. So again, my mind goes towards solutions. Once I figured out there's a way to see this invisible toxin, and if this COVID-19 pandemic has taught us anything, it's we need to be vigilant about invisible exposures in our environment. I went after a grant to get a radio frequency detection meter put on loan in our public library so that anybody in my town can take it out, bring it home, walk around the house, do the scavenger hunt, find out where all your exposures are, and then one by one learn what to do to lower the radiation. So this is called a Safe and Sound Pro 2 broadband radio frequency meter. It captures radiation emissions from 200 megahertz to 8 gigahertz. So here in my house, if nobody in the house has a cell phone on, I just fixed things, right? It's not rocket science. On the back of your router, there are Ethernet ports. All you got to do is plug in an Ethernet cable. And who knew you can buy a little adapter for like 20, 30 bucks that will go to a cell phone or a tablet. And just then, once you've hardwired it, go into the settings and turn off the antennas. So when I talked about you don't want to have those earbuds right on either side of your brain, you don't want to have a headset that has a metal wire transmitting from your device up into your brain, because that metal wire transmits the radiation. Metal amplifies radiation. So you don't want any metal up on your head where you're playing with radiation. So this is something called a hollow tube or an air tube headset, right? It kind of looks a wee bit like a doctor's stethoscope in mini, just plastic tubing that goes to a ferrite bead that breaks any radiation that comes up the wire. It's got good volume control and muting and stuff. So you just hang it over your ears and plug it in, and then you don't have any radiation going directly into your brain. Now, if you still have a radiating device like your cell phone, then you still have radiation. So we don't want to give a false sense of security, but we do want to teach you, if you have to use a cell phone, then use something like a hollow tube headset or speakerphone to at least create some distance from the radiating device. So at the EMF Medical Conference, this is the meter that was recommended for doctors to put on loan in their practices. And I know one doctor here in Massachusetts, she circled back and said, yep, I bought one of these. I tell my patients you can borrow it for $10 and you can have it for 2 hours. Go home, see what you're exposed to, and come right back. And then she can teach them how to remediate the exposures. So in my house, we have hardwired everything with Ethernet cables and adapters, and we turned off the antennas. So when I turn this on, you see that I'm flashing in the green. That is the lowest reading that we can hope for. The middle number on this meter is the one that we want to pay attention to. It's called the max. So what's the maximum spike of radiation that's going on in my house? The unit of measurement is something called a microwatt per square meter. So in a square meter of air, how much radiation do we have? Right now in my home, the maximum is popping up to 5.43. Now that might be because I have a couple of utility meters mounted on the other side of my home for my electric and my solar service. In my town, they do not give us an opt-out to have the old analog meters reinstalled that don't transmit radiation. Smart water meters, gas meters, solar, electric, if it's got an FCC ID number on it, those are all transmitting microwave radiation. So distance is your friend. They're mounted on the far side of my house where we don't spend much time on the dining room wall. So my reading right now, and I might get a little bleed in from my neighbors, I have a maximum reading of 5.43 microwatts per square meter. Now I want to turn on my cell phone. As a rule, I keep it in airplane mode, and people know to get me on my landline or shoot me an email through my hardwired technology. So I'm going to take my cell phone out of airplane mode. And we're now in the flashing red extreme end of this radio frequency detection meter. And I haven't even done anything. This is just my cell phone pulsing for a handshake with the nearest cell tower or router. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and set it back to airplane mode so I don't radiate myself any further. And remember, we were at 5. Turning on my cell phone, we just went to 366,000 microwatts per square meter. In our homes, the scientific literature indicates that we should be under 10, and we were over 300,000 right there. My husband brought home a new stove recently. It was a smart stove. And when I measured that, it was 1,090,000. I was down at the phone store and we measured, one of the guys who worked there had just upgraded to a 5G phone. That topped off my meter at 2.5 million. So we are giving ourselves very serious exposures to microwave radiation up to the point where we learn about it and we make the conscious shift in our mindset to try and get to as low as reasonably achievable. Okay, so I went after a grant in my town. We have a little pot of money that gets redistributed out by our select board. And our select board, it took me 3 grant review cycles, and then I had to go to the library trustees and present to them because I wanted to put a meter in our library so anybody could take it out and go home and see what their exposures are. So we became the first in the United States to have this one on loan. This was back in 2016. The Acoustimeter is another fine meter. The Safe and Sound Pro 2 is just a little more current and perhaps just a little more sensitive to pick up the radiation, but both of them are fine. And then after the first medical conference, a doctor from Newton, Massachusetts, and I met out in California, came back and went after a state grant from our cultural council and did a library program to put one on loan in her library and then do an education session in the community that was very well attended. Out in Pittsfield, Massachusetts, just as the pandemic was getting underway and everybody was sent home to quarantine 24/7, Verizon turned on a cell tower on top of this neighborhood in Pittsfield. And since then, 20 children and adults have become so ill that they've had to abandon their homes. And their library now has a radiation detection meter on loan there too. So my cable station, and I'll tell you, our cable stations are amazing. They're one of the last bastions of independent reporting out there. And they love it when somebody in the community says, hey, I have an idea for a program. Can I come in and do an interview on technology safety? So our cable station's been so good to us over the years. They sent somebody to my house and we did a 23-minute walkthrough of common radiation exposures, the microwave oven, the decked cordless phone, the laptops, all of it to show what a common household might be exposed to and then offer suggestions for remediation. So lots of great resources today that we didn't have, 9 years ago when I fell down the rabbit hole on this issue. So we always want to come back to the independent, peer-reviewed scientific literature. We know the industry creates their own studies done deliberately under conditions that would show no harm. So we want to look beyond those and say, what does the independent science tell us? Let's first look at the long-term effects, and then on the next slide, we'll look at the short-term effects. We should know that our own government in the National Institutes of Environmental Health Sciences, which is part of the National Institutes of Health, these are the gold standard researchers in the world at the National Toxicology Program. They concluded a 20-year study where they went in expecting to prove that cell phones were fine. 20 years ago, 2G or second generation or 3G, third generation technology. That was the technology of the day, and they went in expecting it would be all right. Instead, what they found was clear evidence of cancerous tumors and DNA damage. Now, they have 5 categories that they can assign a toxin to. Clear evidence of harm is the highest And that's what they came up with at the end of their unprecedented 3-day peer review at the National Institutes of Health. So our government's highest investigator is saying clear evidence of cancerous tumors and DNA damage. Now, the industry, when a good study like this comes out, will say, oh, that's just one study, you need to have more than one. Well, right as we completed our study, another large study in Italy at the Ramazzini Institute wrapped up, and they were doing it on cell towers, or what they call base stations. And they found the same thing: cancerous tumors, DNA damage, and more. So we don't need more science. More science can always be done to fine tune what we know. But we have enough science where we should be putting public policy into place to protect the public. So child and adult cancers, DNA damage, which we know is the roadmap to grow a crop or anything from a child to a plant to a pollinator to flora, fauna, all of it. What got me to pluck up the courage to do something about this was when I started doing my investigation and I started reading the fertility studies. They've taken male human sperm and exposed it to a laptop with the antennas turned on, and it changed the DNA. It slowed the motility, or the speed of the sperm, and it caused far fewer sperm to be viable. There's a medical term called apoptosis, which is programmed cell death. It was killing off the sperm, damaging the DNA, and slowing the motility after just 4 hours of exposing sperm to a laptop's radio frequency radiation antennas. So that was the day that I found my voice on this issue and started the conversation with my children's schools. Neurotoxicity. So most of you will recognize that even before the pandemic, we were at epidemic proportions of anxiety and depression among adults and children. This is a neurotoxin. And now we understand the mechanisms of harm better than we did, even 5 or 10 years ago. With the neurotoxicity, the science is telling us that we have something called the blood-brain barrier. That is a film or a membrane that protects sensitive areas like the brain. We also have a gut barrier as well. But this constant bombardment of microwave radiation is eroding that blood-brain barrier, and it is opening it or permeating. So now, let's say as our body's doing its cell repair and regeneration, it cleans up the toxins of the day, it takes them out through the bloodstream. Now, these toxins in the bloodstream can take a left turn and go into sensitive areas, including the brain. So now we see incredible increases in neurotoxic diseases like attention deficit disorder and attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. Dr. Hugh Taylor, who runs the OB/GYN program at Yale Medical School, he's done some of the science with the rodents and exposed the pregnant mice to radio frequency radiation. And when those pups come out, they are bouncing off the walls, just like a child's energy with ADD or ADHD. Dr. Martha Herbert founded the Autism Lab at Massachusetts General Hospital. She's one of our country's leading experts in autism, and she sees huge correlations between what she sees in the families in her care and what we know scientifically happens with microwave radiation. And she recommends the digital detox for her patients. Alzheimer's, Dr. Martin Pall just came out with a new review paper. And I've learned that a review paper collects up all the science that's been done on a topic and analyzes it and aggregates it. And he just came out recently with a new paper on Alzheimer's showing that it is coming on at earlier and earlier and earlier ages. It used to manifest after about 25 years. So maybe when you're 70 or 80, Alzheimer's might become an issue. Now we're seeing it in our 60s, our 50s, our 40s, our 30s, and even some 20-year-olds are getting an Alzheimer's diagnosis. So we really have to get a hold of this. And we are so grateful when we start seeing it coming more mainstream. Many of you will be familiar with the Environmental Working Group. They are another non-government organization that helps to bring awareness to environmental toxins. I first learned about them with their pesticide work. They have a couple of lists that they call the Clean 15 and the Dirty Dozen, which give advice on which pieces of produce you should buy organic and which ones you might be able to get away with, having been grown with chemicals, but maybe there's enough protection in the way that they were grown with chemicals that you might not have to buy those organic if you can't afford it. So we're grateful for the work that the Environmental Working Group is doing on this. But we want to be really mindful that children are not just little adults. They are biologically still under development. Their skulls are thinner. Their brains have a higher water content. And we know that this radiation interacts with water. So Dr. Om Gandhi did this modeling to show the penetration of this radiation when we hold a cell phone up to our brain. These models are turned sideways, and so the little yellow part is the ear. When you put a cell phone up to an adult head, it's penetrating our brain about a third of the way through. On a 10-year-old skull, it's going about 3/4 of the way into the brain with the radiation, and on a 5-year-old child, it's penetrating almost the entire brain with microwave radiation. So we've got to get out in front of this. We know the cool factor and the convenience factor has been promoted everywhere by the wireless industry. They've gotten into our schools, into our homes, into our communities. But we need to be the voice that brings this issue up, because there's some great things happening in public policy, and we'll talk about that, but that's going to take years. And right now, there's a lot we can do to secure our own environments. But what's happening in the short term is something that many people recognize once we simply give them the facts to connect the dots. We should know that the Americans with Disabilities Act has long since recognized electromagnetic sensitivities from man-made radiation. They have a statement out here from 2002. So they've known for 20 years, but they've never taken action to proactively teach the public about this. One of the biggest things that I hear from people after we've done an education session is, I didn't want to believe this. I didn't want to know it. We all love our technology. And again, the message is not no technology, but let's learn to use it with common sense. So they'll come back and say, what you said resonated. And last night I turned everything off. I put all my devices in airplane mode. I turned off the router, the home security, whatever's pulsing microwave radiation. And I slept for the first time in years. So insomnia is a big one. And the reason why that has become such an issue is that we are biologically bound by our circadian rhythm. And in the wee hours of darkness, our pineal gland in the brain will release melatonin. Melatonin then goes in and regulates our sleep, but also helps with the cell repair and cleanup from the day's toxic removals. So what happens is the brain can't differentiate natural daylight from this man-made light energy form that's pulsing this microwave radiation. So the brain thinks the lights are on. So we are dysregulating our own biology's capability to regulate our sleep and to do cleanup and cell repair, because our brain's waiting for it to get dark out there, and it sees this invisible light energy as the lights are on. Headaches, nosebleeds, nausea, dizziness, chronic fatigue, pain from unidentified sources, skin, heating, flushing, rashes, tingling. The gentleman who did our logo for us for Massachusetts for Safe Technology lives in the next town over. And here's how he figured out this issue. His leg was going jiggity. The nerves in his legs were flaring up, and his doctors couldn't figure it out. So Chuck started researching and came upon the science on microwave radiation and the neurotoxicity. And lo and behold, guess where Chuck used to keep his cell phone all day, every day? Right on top of where his nerves were falling apart. So many, many aspects of this microwave radiation that we can learn about and then fix. Heartbeats that go too fast or too slow. That National Toxicology Program $30 million study found tumors in the lining of the heart, in the schwannoma or the Schwann cells. So we know that we are biologically electrical beings. Our brain is our biggest master organ, our heart, our lungs. They all communicate through whispers of signaled pulses all day and all night. And now we've got this huge layer of electrosmog on top of it, and it's no wonder that that can dysregulate the heartbeats. Cognitive impairment, anger, behavior issues, anxiety, depression, suicidal ideation. I'll tell you, if you go to that medical conference, and the public can go too, you can attend for $39. You can license that for $39 to watch the videos. You don't have to be a healthcare practitioner, but be prepared. It just crushed my heart to hear more than one of the medical experts say, as we inundate our society with microwave radiation, we can expect to see more of these societal outbursts like we've seen with these mass shootings, where kids can no longer differentiate between reality and what's been going on in their gaming world, or when we put cell towers at the curb for 5G and the Internet of Things, or we mount smart meters right on top of where people are sleeping. We get this constant bombardment with no break to go in and repair the damage in our bodies. So they said when these smart meters go in, when people bring in too much wireless into their homes, when these small cells show up at the curb, they see an increase in patients presenting with microwave sickness symptoms. So Dr. Martin Paul has an excellent paper here on the neuropsychiatric effects. So we won't spend a lot of time, but no, there's a whole other body of research showing the planetary impact, what it's doing to our poor little pollinators who are just getting bombarded. Our pollinators, you know, our birds, our butterflies, our bees, our wasps, all of our insects and our birds have a natural symbiotic relationship with the Earth's electromagnetic fields. They have systems in their beaks and in their brains that allow them to navigate with the Earth's electromagnetic field. And now we introduce this massive layer of electrosmog, and we wonder why they're getting dysregulated and can't find their way back to the beehives. We get report after report when these macro cell antennas, the big antennas, and the small cells go in of birds dropping dead out of the sky. We've gotten recent reports again of that happening. And then for anybody concerned about climate change, we need to understand that wireless technology consumes 10 times more energy than the responsible solution, which is just running fiber optics or high-speed cable or copper right to the premises, pick up with Ethernet cables and adapters indoors, and turn off all the wireless. The energy consumption, what goes into mineral extraction down in the Congo and other areas where these human atrocities are happening. If that were made public, people would never fall for the gimmicks of the industry that say, oh, here's a new one, get rid of your old one, get the new shiny object. You would use every single purchase to its entire full useful life when you understand what's happening to people to get the many minerals that go into every one of our technology devices. And then we have the data warehouses that are consuming massive amounts of energy, all of our networks, and all of our personal devices. Streaming consumes far more energy if you're doing that live. Learn to download whatever it is you want to watch or listen to, put it on your device, and then go into airplane mode and turn off the antennas. You can watch anything safely on your device once the radiation is done transmitting. Every time we send and receive, we're consuming energy. Every time we charge and recharge, we are consuming energy. I never have to charge my landline phone. It doesn't even have an electrical cord. So I'm not consuming the kind of energy that everybody using wireless technology is consuming. And then we've been given the opportunity to get this app and have this and have that. And honestly, we honestly don't even use most of them, but we've got them riddled on our devices, and they're in the background doing continuous updates and consuming energy. So again, the message is not no technology. It's safe, responsible technology, and we're here to help you understand how to get there. One of the missing puzzle pieces for me was, if this is as bad as what little old me is finding in the scientific literature, Surely somebody's got to have our backs on this, right? Well, I fell down the rabbit hole in 2013. In 2015, Harvard Law School Center for Ethics came up with this online report that's free and available today called Captured Agency: How the Federal Communications Commission is Dominated by the Industries it Presumably Regulates. So notice the graphic they used for this, the revolving door. That's what our FCC has been comprised of for decades. Industry leaders come in and get appointed to the FCC, and they represent the industry desires instead of public protections. And then it goes into other agencies as well. Remember that $30 million study that I said our government did? Well, when it was commissioned 20 plus years ago now, there were other people in charge of the radiation area. Now the gentleman who's in charge of the radiation at the Food and Drug Administration is Dr. Jeffrey Shuren. When the NTP concluded clear evidence of cancerous tumors and DNA damage, that should have been the trigger for public policy to fix this. Instead, Dr. Shuren wrote up a notice to the FCC that said, basically, nothing to look at here. Your public radiation exposure limits are fine. So one might ask, what would ever possess Dr. Shuren to do that? Well, when you look at his background, he's married to a woman who's a partner in a law firm that represents, guess who? The wireless industry and the chemical industry and pharmaceutical, So we have to know who we're dealing with and recognize that there's no cavalry coming anytime soon. So it's up to you and I to learn about this, secure our own environments as best as we can, and then pluck up the courage to use these incredible resources that we have today to start these important conversations with our towns and our schools and our senior centers and our libraries, and start demanding that we use safe fiber to and through the premises. So that's all the bad news. Here's the good news. It's not rocket science to fix this. Okay, as I mentioned, on the back of your router, you'll see Ethernet ports. All you need to do is get a big long Ethernet cable and run it to wherever you use most of your technology in your home. We recommend a shielded Ethernet cable for people who do get sick from this and are electromagnetically sensitive. Even the wiring in your walls has an electric and a magnetic field that can create an energy field about 6 to 8 feet into your room. And some people are sensitive to that aside from the microwave radiation. So if you're going to do this, you want to get as much protection as you can. You just pay a couple extra bucks and you will get a shielded Ethernet cable, and it'll say shielded right on it. Most people have more than one device these days. So there's this little box you can get called an Ethernet switch. You can think of it as an extension cord for electronics. So it plugs into the wall to give it electricity, and then you just plug in one cable here that goes to your router. Then you get these little cables and adapters for each of your devices and just plug them in. And the beauty of this is when you use an Ethernet switch, every one of these holes connects directly to the internet. So you're not competing with everybody else in your house for bandwidth and signal. So an Ethernet switch has a lot of good benefits to it. In a classroom, you could get one that has, an Ethernet switch with 28 or 30 ports on it. So there's a solution for every problem here. Once you go into hardwiring, today's technology does not yet automatically turn off the radiation. So you manually need to go into your settings and track down all your antennas. The cellular, the data, the Wi-Fi, the Bluetooth, the hotspot, the locator. And if you didn't know better than to upgrade to a 5G phone, please don't if you haven't already. But if you have, you'll likely have to track down additional antennas in there for 5G. So that's okay. Just go find them, turn them off. Same thing with your laptops, your tablets, whatever you've got, all your gaming systems. Gamers know that you get a much better signal when it's hardwired. And your data is better secured. Your privacy is better secured. Sustainability-wise, again, uses far less energy. And it's more future-proof than anything wireless is ever going to give us. So turn off the antennas And then it's really important to measure, because with this Internet of Things, they're looking to put an antenna or multiple antennas in every single thing you purchase these days. And it's mind-boggling that they now have the iPotty. So as your child is potty training, they can sit there with a tablet and play and get radiated, unless you know to download the applications on that device and turn off the radiating antennas. Like I said, my stove was radiating. Who needs that? So it's critically important to measure. I had to call the technician to come to my house to pull off the back of my stove, and where the digital display panel was, right next to it, there was another little board, and all he had to do was unplug that wireless antenna board from the master control, and I measured again, and the radiation was gone. He was really dubious when he came into my house. He didn't know what I was talking about, and he was really kind of rude. But by the end, and I was using my meter because I wanted to be darn sure before he left my house that I was back down to under 10 in my living space of microwatts per square meter. And God bless him, by the end of our visit, he thanked me for teaching him something. And he said, and honestly, I don't buy any of those appliances with bells and whistles on them. I get the stripped down model that does exactly what I want it to do. So I said, well, where do you find them? At Lowe's and Home Depot. It's all the latest and greatest with all the radiating stuff. He says, I order mine online. So there are solutions everywhere. And don't be afraid to invest in a radio frequency detection meter to help you get there. So let's quickly look at the sources of radiation that you might not have control over. You know, we've talked about what to do with the devices under our control. Utility smart meters are being mounted on our homes for gas, water, and electric. They continuously pulse radiation. I measured mine. It pulsed 17,000 times a day. And thankfully, I know enough not to have my children, my loved ones, an elderly person, or anybody with an existing health condition, or a perfectly healthy person anywhere near those meters. And I put a guard over mine as well. The transmissions can hop on the house wires and pipes if it's not properly grounded. It can turn your whole house into a big giant microwave antenna, and we've seen people get very sick from that. They are not necessarily bringing in electricians who are certified to do the installations. Sometimes they're getting, you know, ne'er-do-wells in society who need a quick buck to come in and install these things. We have many, many reports of fires and explosions and improper grounding where the electromagnetic fields are making people sick. The industry is selling your data that they're gathering, and these are huge privacy issues. And as that they told us at the medical conference, these smart meters are a leading cause of sudden onset sickness. It's a big environmental justice issues. They'll come into largely minority communities, install their pilot programs, call it a success, and then roll it out all across the state with no informed consent to the public. And we have a case of that here in Worcester, Massachusetts. This is a great TED Talk by Jeremy Johnson. He's a Silicon Valley engineer married to a woman who's a doctor. And they both got really sick, and nothing in her medical training could help them figure out what the heck was going on. And when they researched their symptoms, they realized it was the smart meters in their condo. There was a bank of them that made them very sick. So now Jeremy has dedicated his life's work to helping people. He does consultations. You can do consultations online with him. Really smart. He has lived this nightmare, and he knows hands-on how to tell you how to make your environment safer. And he's got this great TED Talk out there. Cell towers. Used to be, they started in industrial parks, 300 feet up in the air, and then they started encroaching closer and closer. They got laws written saying if you can have it blend in to the environment, if you can paint it the same color of the building, you can actually mount these cell towers on a building or put them on the rooftops. And people get so sick when this happens. There's a website called antennasearch.com where you can go and put in an address, and it will typically return a 3-mile radius and tell you where most of these big antennas are and then where the cell towers are. I put in the State House address here in Massachusetts, And there were so many. They have penetrated our big cities so deeply. It couldn't give me a 3-mile radius. It only gave me 1 mile because there were more than 1,000 antennas in a 1-mile radius of our state house. 70 towers, 1,000 antennas. A lot of these are mounted right on buildings. So gather your data and then look to the non-industry funded, peer-reviewed, credible scientific literature. This Understanding EMFs is my personal research repository because I got in way over my head and I couldn't remember where I found good information that I later wanted to share. So being a tech writer, I just started categorizing it. You'll see there's no bells or whistles here. I have a navigation so you can break it down to get to what you want to look at. And then I go bullet by bullet and just, here's the facts, and you can look directly at the sources of information. But what the non-industry funded science is telling us is that there's a death curve. Within this slope, people are dying faster than the general population when there's a cell tower nearby. They're having neurological issues, sleep issues, and so on. This slope starts to come down at about 500 meters, which is 1,640 feet. It starts to come down at 500 meters. It doesn't actually level off with the general population death rate until about double that at 1,000 meters or 3,000 feet. So you want to be at least 500 meters from a cell tower, okay? There is no safe level of microwave radiation identified in the scientific literature, though. And that's what we have to honestly tell ourselves and not fall for a safe, false sense of security here. So on top of these big cell towers, we now have to look at the 5G small cells. 5G simply means 5th generation technology, but it's using a whole new layer on top of the toxic technology that's already installed. So our cell signals for 3 and 4G are going along on much longer microwaves. Those longer microwaves can penetrate stuff like our buildings, and it can go through the flora and the fauna and the snow and the rain to reach your device wherever you are, indoors, outdoors. There's something called the electromagnetic spectrum, and they've monetized all those longer waves. All that's left are these dinky little millimeter waves. And so they're now deploying those millimeter waves on top of the longer waves because they need the backbone from the longer waves to carry this stuff. But with these small waves, they're spinning it up that you're going to have faster entertainment downloads in just seconds. You can download a whole movie, smart cities, super highways. But take a look at who's buying up the entertainment industry. They're building out their revenue stream by buying the entertainment industry and then selling you devices so you can download their entertainment quickly and toxically. So 5G adds on these millimeter waves, and their solution, because these millimeter waves can't go through buildings and stuff, they can't travel very far. They now want to put a cell tower at the curb outside your home every 2 to 12 houses, right in our neighborhoods, right outside our bedrooms, at bedroom height, every 2 to 12 houses. And they're already doing it. So we need to know what's going on in each of our towns. There's no cavalry coming. We get to be the lucky ones to start those conversations. So Senator Richard Blumenthal in Washington, D.C. was at a congressional hearing with the Commerce Committee, and he said to 2 industry representatives, please share with us how much money did the industry invest to do the research and ensure that 5G was safe before coming to market. And the industry tried to spin it and they hemmed and hawed, and then ultimately they were made to say, we don't actually know of any independent science that's been funded on this. So Blumenthal said, so basically, as far as health and safety are concerned, we're flying blind here. And that's the facts. Computer World and others are already reporting that 5G is a big joke. It's not even giving us the faster speeds that we are already getting with 3G and 4G. And here in January, Verizon is boasting that they exposed 100 million people to 5G in our big cities, and they're also taking it to smaller communities now too. Dr. Beverly Rubik and Dr. Rob Brown have put out a paper showing evidence for connection between COVID-19 and exposure to radio frequency radiation, including these small cell 5G antennas that are going in. And it makes sense once you understand how our bodies work and what the science is telling us. Our biological cells only have so much energy. And that energy is well suited to do our normal cell repair and regeneration and give us our energy to get through our daily routines. And when you add on this man-made burden of radiation that our bodies now have to use our energy to fight off and try and do cell repair and regeneration from that, it leaves very little to do the normal work our cells need to do. And then you add on the burden of a pandemic and a virus that our poor immune systems are over there trying to box away too. It's no wonder that when you look at the numbers of death rates from COVID and case rates from COVID, that they are much higher in areas where 5G has gone in, including in Wuhan, China, where we got started with this fiasco. So lots of good information here. One thing that we can all consider doing is becoming a citizen scientist for a project that's going on up in Canada. Dr. Magda Havas taught radio frequency radiation at Trent University for, I think, 25 years. So she knows this subject inside and out. She also knows that our governments have largely dropped the ball and they are not monitoring all these cumulative chronic exposures of microwave radiation coming from all these directions now, from our cars, from our buildings, from our devices. So she has started the Global EMF Monitoring Project, and anybody who wants to buy one of these Safe and Sound Pro 2 meters, the gentleman who manufactures these, another really wonderful engineer who knows microwave sickness, unfortunately, firsthand. He's offering a discount. It normally retails for about $385. Anybody who wants to invest in this may let them know, go out to the globalemf.net website here, and he will provide a discount code that allows you to get it for, I think, about $307 plus shipping. So a bit of a discount, but I'm telling you, with the Internet of Things, you want to have a meter so that you can know if these sneaky antennas have come into your space again. So what she does, she calls this her brag project. Can you brag about your town? B stands for black, where it's way very high. R stands for red, where it's in the red zone, it's high. A for amber, and G for green. The Salzburg guidelines were world-leading scientists who got together and said, okay, if we could get to 1,000 microwatts per square meter or less outdoors, presuming you're not like standing under whatever's radiating outdoors all day long, if we could even get to 1,000 outdoors, that would probably be doable, presuming we get to go home to a clean environment where our bodies at night can do its proper cell repair and regeneration. So she has a protocol where you go around your downtown area and you take measurements the same way that we're all doing it. And then we map it out. We put our data in her database and it shows up as a dot on her world map. And you can see where you might want to live, where it's more green. But this is one point in time. Those antennas can show up at any time. So it's great for people to get the devices to measure this. Like I did in my town, we got one put out in the community through our library. Others, I know Lori Schreier, who's one of the New Hampshire for Safe Technology leaders, she and her neighbor split the cost and they share the meter. So lots of different ways to do this if cost is a factor. So just an idea of what our communities look like now. Again, green, we want to be at 1,000 or less. At one of the fire departments in New Hampshire, nice and green. Walking in downtown Keene, New Hampshire, getting into the danger zone, and the industry is now putting small cells in Keene. Nashua, New Hampshire, red zone. Concord, New Hampshire, red zone. And we took these readings during the pandemic when there weren't even many people out and about. Imagine what it's like today as we reopen as a society and everybody in all their cars are cruising around transmitting radiation. Stratham, New Hampshire, they have a cell tower down on their main strip that put us into the black zone, very near to neighborhoods. And then in Boston, we went and measured one of our high tourist areas in the North End. That's where all of our incredible Italian restaurants and bakeries are. We were getting readings of 613,000 just walking down the street. And we realized these pretty wrought iron lamps are actually small cell antennas right at the curb where people stand and walk all day, every day. And then above the businesses, the North End was where immigrants used to come during the war and live above these businesses. So we've still got a lot of little old people, young people, people of all ages who live right in the North End, and they now have these cell towers right outside their windows. That's 5G in the Internet of Things. So let's get to the good news. Martin Luther King Jr. taught us that when we have important changes in society, it comes through 3 channels. One, the public becomes educated and starts speaking up, and that's what we're hoping to initiate here today. The courts eventually rule and punish the people who are doing bad things in society, and public policy ultimately catches up with, in this case, the science. So let's look at those 3 areas. We've talked about the public a bit, but in the law, you can drill down into these, but you need to know that the FCC, when they filed their ruling that we can stick with the public radiation exposure limits that we've had since the 1990s, when we didn't even have this proliferation of man-made radiation, when they reaffirmed that those are still okay, that got filed in something called the Federal Register. Once their determination hit the Federal Register, then the lawsuits happened. The Environmental Health Trust, Children's Health Defense, and others sued the FCC for ignoring 11,000 pages of scientific evidence that was filed into a public docket at the FCC. So when the judges were presented with 27 big fat binders of all this evidence, they said to the FCC, so show us your homework. What did you do to determine that this radiation level is still okay? And they kind of did one of these, well, oh, the FDA said it was okay. Well, we know the FDA is not looking after the public interest. So the courts ruled against the FCC. They determined that their reaffirmation of those radiation limits was arbitrary and capricious, which means they didn't do their homework. Nobody in our federal government has done the scientific review of the literature showing harm. So now it's been remanded back to the FCC. We've got the fox watching the hen house again. So it's up to us to figure this out at the town level and push it up to the state and federal level. So lots happening that empower us. There's groundbreaking work happening in Pittsfield. I mentioned that Verizon cell tower went on top of a neighborhood, and children and adults got so sick they had to abandon their homes. It took so much push from this community, bringing in the world leading scientists, bringing in the doctors, getting diagnosed as electromagnetically ill. And finally, they had a new board of health leader who was a nurse, and Bobby Orsi was there when there were other chemicals in their town. So she knows the corporate playbook that these big companies come in and do. She and her board of health did the deep dive for 18 months, and they wrote a cease and desist order, an emergency order for Verizon, documenting all the harm that's been happening, documenting the science. So this is a really powerful document to share with our own towns. This is the first time a board of health has done this. And they wanted to sue Verizon to implement this cease and desist order, but their mayor is very deep in bed with industry, it looks to be, and their city council, and they refuse to back their board of health. So now the citizens are suing in a civil suit with the help of Children's Health Defense. They have lawyered up for them. And now, just in the last week or two, they announced a lawsuit against Pittsfield because they want that cease and desist order to be enforced. So lots of good things happening that our towns can then take as a stepping stone to get your community safe. We have a federal court ruling at the Fay School here in Massachusetts where children were getting sick. The courts recognize that, yes, there are indeed biological effects at the non-thermal level, meaning the FCC's heat limits don't mean anything if you're getting sick at the non-thermal levels. So lots of good lawsuits happening all over. As far as public policy goes, as Deb mentioned, the work that she did with her state legislator, Representative Patrick Abrami, he and Deb jumped in his car and drove down to my house in Massachusetts, and we spent the afternoon helping him to really connect the dots on this issue. And then he went back and beefed up a bill that he was writing with very pointed questions that demand answers. Why has the insurance industry long since recognized electromagnetic fields of radio frequency as a world-leading risk? And they have put exclusions in their policies. So our towns may very likely be left holding the bag legally for allowing toxic wireless radiation exposures at close range. Why does the legal fine print that we reviewed say to keep this off the body? Why is the FCC ignoring the science? Why do they not even address the non-thermal effects? And why do our limits allow 100 times more radiation than what certain other countries are doing? And why is nobody looking at the cumulative effect, like in a classroom where you've got 20 or 30 devices just pulsing at all of our children, all the way through the walls, the floors, the ceilings, everywhere, and the wireless access points, and everything that we brought into our house? Nobody's accounting for the cumulative effect. So as I mentioned, Deb and others in New Hampshire, and we brought in world-leading experts to testify in New Hampshire in 2019. It passed the House Committee on Science, Technology, and Energy. Their commission bill then passed the Senate Health and Human Services Committee, and then it went under Governor Sununu's pen. He signed it into law that they had to form a commission, investigate for a year, and come back and report. And they came back with this groundbreaking report that actually documents the conflicts of interest with our federal agencies and the wireless industry. And then they make 15 recommendations, not in any particular order because they're all critically important, to get our federal delegates on board with this, get the EPA and the FDA and the FCC to do the right thing by the public, then start labeling everything. So if you put up a cell tower or a small cell, there needs to be an eye-level big sign that says, warning, radiation. So you don't spend time, so kids aren't parking their bikes leaning up against these things. And then start transitioning our towns to hardwired technology and getting rid of the wireless and keeping distance. So this groundbreaking report, it looks huge. It's 400 pages, and much of that goes to credit to Deb, who volunteered her time to serve along with these commissioners. And she took minutes that were then approved at each subsequent meeting. And they met 13 times and brought in world-leading experts. And on the commission, they had doctors, they had scientists, they had engineers, very highly qualified professionals to assess the science. So that report is one of the best documents to share today with our towns, and it's available for free online. And I love the way Rep. Abrami, who was appointed chair of this commission, orchestrated it. The meat is in the first 17 pages and the print is pretty big. So you can whip through this and see what they recommended and how they documented the corruption with our federal agencies. And then you have the appendices with all the science links that you can go drill down into and see what's going on. So this is an excellent document to share with anybody you are opening up the conversation with. So Dr. Kent Chamberlain was the chair of the Computer and Electrical Engineering Department at the University of New Hampshire. He has worked with EMFs his entire career, and he thought this was going to be a slam dunk. Of course, EMFs are fine, right? Thank goodness Dr. Chamberlain is a man of integrity, just as Representative Abrami is. Senator Denise Ricciardi in New Hampshire also fought off a cell tower in her town. And Dr. Gary Wood is a medical doctor who has a physics background and understands this. They have all co-sponsored a bill this session, which Deb referenced, which is House Bill 1644, to start implementing a couple of the recommendations in the commission report. Get setbacks. Do not allow the industry to put cell towers at close range. And those setbacks align with the scientific literature that says the death rate and the neurotoxicity starts to go down at 500 meters. So at least do that much. And then they also included a registry of harm where people who get sick can log in their data and what's happened to them so that we can look statistically at what is happening. And Dr. Kent Chamberlain pulled together a 20-minute presentation with slides that walks everybody through why this setback is imperative in our communities. Frank Clegg is that retired president of Microsoft Canada. He sent in testimony for this hearing in January, February, March, April, May. There have been hearings that have been going on in New Hampshire. And in his testimony, we see him say that wireless technology is no longer advanced technology. It has outlived its useful life as a main source of connectivity. We need to be bringing fiber to and through the premises. And a lot of communities are doing that now. So all these hearings are here. New Hampshire tends to do a transparent process, at least with the hearings. What goes on behind closed doors, we can't know. But at least you can watch these hearings and the facts that are being presented. So just know that this is happening all over the country. If you go to Americans for Responsible Technology, there are more than 150 groups already set up doing the education and trying to get bylaws passed in their towns to protect themselves from close range, and then also to start talking to the schools and to teach their loved ones how to use technology in a very good and responsible way. So lots of examples that people can go look at. Many towns are wising up and taking proactive measures. Americans for Responsible Technology is gathering up a lot of the best practices, and they have a whole toolkit that anybody can go access to see what they can take to their towns credibly and start this conversation. So feel free to poke around in all these resources. Easton, Connecticut, a grandmother figured out what was going on with 5G, took it to her town. They held the review and decided that they're putting a 5G moratorium on until it can be proven safe. And they just re-upped their moratorium until 2023. So there are things our towns can do regardless of what the industry's been spinning and telling our towns, oh, your hands are tied. This is what the law is. You have to let us just do this. Well, that's not true. There's a lot that should be in our bylaws to protect us while still allowing for connectivity, not as close to where we need to live and go to school and worship and go see medical care. So lots of good stuff happening all over the country. We have great resources to start this conversation with our schools. The New York Times did a series of articles talking about how Silicon Valley executives are educating their children. There's a series of articles that talks about they're sending their kids to schools with no technology, not wireless, not hardwired. They know a child's brain does not develop properly in front of a screen. Children need to be with their peers, with trusted adults, teachers, their natural environment. That's how a child's brain properly develops, through true, meaningful connections with their world. There's a place for technology in education, but that is only to be used for a tool, not as a substitute. So Silicon Valley executives are actually having their nannies sign contracts that there will be no screens around their children. God bless our friends at Grassroots Environmental Education. They're the ones who put up the Americans for Responsible Technology project. They've got a baby safe project with Dr. Hugh Taylor out of Yale Medical. And now their latest toolkit is called Tech Safe Schools. And they, if you contact them, they will send letters out to your school administrators telling them the biological risk, the legal risk, and how to remediate and get to safe technology in our schools. And again, it's not rocket science. They're 90% of the way there in most of our schools. They have hardwired technology coming into the schools, going into their computer systems. It's just that wireless last 10% with those access points that need to be turned off, and they can just run Ethernet cables to the devices and solve the problem. It's a big mind shift because our schools were penetrated by the industry at the state level that got our state level administrators to wheedle in all of this technology into the curriculum. And if you are not following that, your school's going to get dinged in your state level reviews. And so it puts our schools between a rock and a hard place, but it's high time that everybody starts speaking up, because once you get a group of educated parents and grandparents and guardians, then they have to pay attention to you. One voice can very easily be swept under the rug. And that was my hard lesson learned here in Ashland, Massachusetts, when our schools became the first in the nation to even have this sign. This is a hard fought win, but they're still waiting for higher authorities to tell them what to do. And if I knew then what I know now, I would have educated every one of my friends first, all the parents of the kids that my kids hung out with. I would have educated everybody. And then as a force, we would have gone in there and very diplomatically, very collaboratively, very professionally demanded that they remove this radiation from our schools. So it takes that kind of courage to get this moving, because there is no cavalry coming to protect our kids. But like I said, we already have off-the-shelf training. Our friends at Environmental Health Trust with Theodora Scarrato and Dr. Deborah Davis and their whole panel of experts, they have incredible printable resources. They have signs, they have flyers, they have postcards to take action on this. And Theodora and others in Maryland helped their state level public agency become the first in the nation to recommend hardwiring our schools. There's something called the U.S. Collaborative for High Performance Schools, which is a criteria set that schools can aspire to be classified as a green school. And Dr. Tony Stein worked with them and came up with a module on electromagnetic fields for both the radio frequency and the dirty electricity. And that is now part of the optional best practices to get certified as a green school. So when the pandemic hit, Cyprus and Russia and other countries put out bulletins to their families and their schools on how to access technology safely from home. Simply run Ethernet cables and adapters to the routers and turn off the antennas. If you can't do that for whatever reason, create as much distance as you can and turn off everything when it's absolutely not needed. And, put things down, watch your ergonomics, watch for the eye strain, do the eye gymnastics to strengthen the muscle. So great resources all over that our schools should know about. Now, for our professionals, we are so blessed to have these incredible resources today. Dr. Cindy Russell and others formed Physicians for Safe Technology, a very credible website to go to send your medical teams to, your first responders, to take a look at the science that's out there, and then go get that training at the EMF Medical Conference. When we had the Health and Buildings Roundtable Conference down at the National Institutes for Health, there was a call for papers. And so Frank Clegg, Theodora Scarrato, some of the building biologists, some of the scientists and the doctors, they came up with a paper called Building Science and Radio Frequency Radiation: What Makes Smart and Healthy Buildings. So this is great for the professions to take a look at this on how to build a safe building. And then again, we've got all these other resources for engineers and physicists and technologists. And for us, again, we've got the online training. A lot of people are do-it-yourselfers. A lot of people are just, it's just out of their scope to be able to fix this on their own. So it's wonderful to know that there is an entire profession called building biologists that are trained, certified professionals who can do an assessment of your exposures, give you a report, and then from there you can decide what to do. Some of the building biologists are capable of coming in and remediating. Others will recommend an electrician to come in and do the work that needs to be done. But you don't have to do this on your own. There are professionals. And this award-winning film, Generation Zapped, is now available through Amazon Prime. It's part of the collections with most of our public libraries that have subscriptions to Canopy or Hoopla. And you can watch it for free with your friends, with the parents in your community, and start this conversation in a really good way. This film was chosen as part of the United Nations Film Festival. It won Best Documentary for the Women's Independent Film Festival. And well, it picked up other accolades. So this is a great resource to start the conversation credibly. I can be brought in to do education forums for your neighborhood, for your town. I'm often asked to speak at a zoning board or a planning board meeting if given enough advance notice, and just let me know how long you have to give public comment, and we can certainly help to get information out there credibly. On PBS, Bert Wolf on his travel show did 2 episodes with some of the experts in this field. And then again, here's that toolkit that you can go and grab all these incredible resources to start this conversation in your community. And remember, our kids are watching everything that we do, so we have to be the example. We have to take the leadership role on minimizing our screen time and our radiation exposures. And remember, what did we used to do before we sat in front of our screens all day? I love this poster of 50 ways to take a break. Go out, go for hikes, go to the beach, go hang out with your friends, go play out in the street, go do music, go help a neighbor, go write a poem, go meditate, go talk with a friend, go dancing, all these things that make us feel connected to ourselves, our environment, and to others that are healthy and good for us to do. So let's just remember that. Now, some of you may be familiar with the concept of grounding or earthing. It's another body of science that shows that every living thing on this planet is meant to be physically connected to the planet. We get electrons from the earth that come up and help regulate our own bioelectrical systems. But ever since we started walking around on rubber-soled shoes and blacktop, those don't allow those electrons to penetrate. When you connect to something that's connected to the earth, like the needles on a pine tree, the leaves on a plant, you are instantly grounded to that good healing energy through that plant. Or if your pet is on the ground, on the grass, or even cement is conductive, but not blacktop because it seals it off. Just touch the less furry parts and you are instantly grounded. So lots of free healing energy out there. And Dr. Laura Conover wrote this book called The Earth Prescription, and she takes it season by season on how you can earth or ground naturally and get the healing benefit there. Great book. So here's what needs to happen at our municipal level. Once you secure your own spaces, please find the courage to get others to join you in this conversation and then go to your town. Don't be a lone voice. You're too easy to sweep under the rug. So we have incredible resources for municipal leaders. This is a page on my research repository, Understanding EMFs, but it's critical that our towns learn to differentiate the industry's priorities from the public's priorities. And we're so grateful for this online resource called Reinventing Wires, the Future of Landline and Networks. And it talks about not just the health impact, but why it's really a bad raw deal to allow wireless into our communities. It is not sustainable technology. It consumes huge amounts of energy, and they go through a dozen different critically important reasons why we need to bring fiber to and through the premises, and always measure against biological effects, not those shallow FCC guidelines from 25 years ago that mean nothing. I've talked about getting to as low as reasonably achievable. That's the ALARA principle, and our Centers for Disease Control and Protection already have the ALARA principle for ionizing radiation. That's the sun and the gamma rays and X-rays. We would never leave ourselves or our loved ones exposed 24/7 to those. And yet here we are with this man-made radiation. So they have 3 tenets to their ALARA principle: reduce the amount of time that you're exposed, create as much distance from the exposures as you can, and shield where necessary if you can't get away from it, right? That's why we wear a lead apron when we go to the dentist and have x-rays taken. So we need to start doing that for the non-ionizing radiation as well. So great tools. Here's a checklist from Americans for Responsible Technology that you can take to your town and say, hey, what does our zoning bylaw, our zoning code say? And have we covered all these points? And if not, we better act really fast, because the industry is forcing these small cells in at the curb in unsuspecting towns. So let's get our stuff as strong as we can under the law that exists today, regardless of the lies that the industry is telling our towns. We know attorneys who can come in and help with this. So again, there's no safe level. We need to speak up. We need to get the legislation passed, educate the public, keep coming to these info sessions, bring more and more people, so together we can learn what needs to happen, and just keep learning. So, you know, a smart town will form a townwide technology committee, because technology is here to stay. So let's learn to use it responsibly. Our towns need to learn about this so they can offer a no-fee opt-out from these utility smart meters that are pulsing radiation. And more importantly, get the industry to make these meters that don't emit radiation, that hardwire right into the house's internet system. And again, don't be shy about recommending that you bring in a good attorney, because most of our town attorneys are completely out of their league with this. But I know Andrew Campanelli used to work for industry until he figured out what was going on. Now he represents individuals in towns. And for, I think, his fee to go through your bylaws is $8,500. And he does this all day, every day. So that's pretty short money compared to what the lawsuits are going to cost if your towns get sued for exposing our citizens to wireless radiation. So educate our communities. Look at this from where you are. What professional organizations do you belong to? How can we start opening the conversation there, right? And again, for today, come back to this little graphic, see what you're exposed to, and then come up with a plan, baby steps to start reducing. Notice what's radiating. Start with baby steps. Create a sleep sanctuary above all else, so your body stands a chance of repairing the damage before it's too late. Ethernet cables and adapters, not rocket science. Choose airplane mode as a rule of thumb, and only then turn on the one antenna that you need, only for as long as you need it on. And our friends at Environmental Health Trust has all these, fact sheets ready to go, how to help educate ourselves, our children, our medical teams, our first responders, how to have this conversation with other parents. And then they've got a pretty in-depth checklist for what you need to be looking at around your own spaces. So the resources are plentiful, and we thank you for joining us. Here's how you can connect with New Hampshire for Safe Technology. Our hope is that as New Hampshire residents learn about this, they will come to a comfort level where they will reach out and call their state senator and their state rep and say, hey, if you haven't tuned into this issue, if you've been given disinformation by the industry, please come to one of these education sessions and just listen to the facts, and then drill down into the slides as a launch point and do the investigation, because we need our legislators' support to enact public policy that will protect us. So in New Hampshire, that is our ask of you. And then we don't like to spend our very limited resources reinventing the wheels. So we invite everybody in New Hampshire to go to Massachusetts for Safe Technology. On our resources page, you'll find all the science and stuff. On the events page, you'll always find the listing of these webinars that we're doing and other events that are happening around. So, you know, we like to partner with our sister organizations and just use our resources as streamlined as we can. So reach out to any of us. New Hampshire for Safe Technology has a Gmail address as well as this Facebook page, and people can contact me through our website, and you can email me here. So thank you, everybody, for giving us our time. I will stop the share. And again, we're going to send everybody who registered the slides and the video, and please share it with others. And now we will check in with Deb to see if there are any questions that we can answer, anything
Oh,
that's coming
yes.
through the
There are
chat.
lots of questions.
Okay, Deb, fire it up.
Lots of questions. The first one I saw was, do the results from the U.S. toxicology program apply to Wi-Fi?
Yes, that's an excellent question.
Mhm.
So get this. Back in 2011, the World Health Organization did a look at this. And at that time, we were missing the animal studies. The NTP, National Toxicology Program study, was an animal study. It was a rodent study. The Ramazzini Institute study was a rodent study because it's unethical to do these studies on humans. So what happens to these certain Sprague Dolly rats and mice and stuff that they're using, they choose those because that's what happens to us. Okay, so in 2011, the World Health Organization classified this radio frequency radiation as a group 2B possible human carcinogen. Now that we have clear evidence of all this harm, there are those calling for the WHO to reinvestigate. They've reopened the investigation, and now they're putting together a commission. We're seeing if it's going to get stacked with industry or whether they're going to have real doctors and scientists on it. But back as far as 2011, when they classified this as a group 2B possible human carcinogen, same category as lead and thalidomide and chloroform and a host of toxic chemicals, they very clearly stated that this applies to all man-made radio frequency radiation. So it doesn't matter where it's coming from. Your Wi-Fi router, your wearable, your Roku, your Chromecast, your smart meter, the cell towers, the small cells, your wireless home security system, everything, your tablet, everything that's transmitting radio frequency radiation is this toxin.
Okay, next question. How can we quantify or equate the EMF meter readings with levels that folks are familiar with? For example, a dental x-ray.
That's a great question. I would refer people to a website called the Bioinitiative Report. Okay. And the Bioinitiative Report comes with something called color charts. And what they've done is they've broken it into the biological effects that we know are happening, like the cancers, the neurologic issues, the autism, and all these things. They've got it color coded to the science. Now, what we're talking about with this man-made radiation is non-ionizing radiation. What you're talking about with X-rays is ionizing radiation. It's a different kind of radiation. Okay, so I know I'm not giving you the right answer because I'm not the right person to answer that, but it's two different kinds of radiation. The X-rays can break the bond in the atom, and that's where they know the harm can happen. With the non-ionizing radiation, you don't have to break the bond. You don't have to have so much heat that it breaks the bond, because our FCC limits allow this much radiation, and the science is showing the harm at hundreds of thousands of times below that non-ionizing radiation. So what I would suggest you do to get a direct answer is to reach out to the Building Biology Institute, and those guys are trained technically on all of this, and somebody there will be able to answer that question. But I hope that helps to differentiate that we're talking two different kinds of radiation. If anybody else has a better answer, by all means, chime in.
Okay, next up, National Grid and other utility providers now do not have analog mechanical meters. They only offer digital display, and they claim that those do not emit any frequencies. Does anyone know if that's true?
That is false.
Yeah.
That is false. We can take a microwave radiation detection meter like I did. I sat there next to the meters in my dining room. They're on the other side of the wall outside. The industry will tell you that it's transmitting data maybe 6 times an hour or something. But what they're not accounting for is that microwave pulse is spiking all the time. When I measured, it was coming out, when I did the math, to 17,000 times a day. So it's simply false when they say it's fine. Those smart meters are really toxic.
There's another question about how to help the kids in school and how many people is enough to get together to go to your school or your town.
Ooh, great questions. I recommend people go out to tech safe schools and use the resources that they have there. They recommend that you start by educating those around you. And when I was talking to my legislators about this, one of my legislators said, if 3 people in my district talk to me about the same issue, that's a lot of people, right? So do your education, watch Generation Zap together, and then come back to my slides, which show you what's happened since that film was released in 2018. We now have a lawsuit clarifying that the FCC limits are not protected. They've ignored 11,000 pages of scientific evidence. We now have the Pittsfield Board of Health being the first in the nation to write up a cease and desist order. And we now have the citizens in Pittsfield suing the town for abdicating their responsibility to the public. So lots is happening. So even if you have 3 or 5 people, do not expect that anybody's going to take the ball and run with it. You have to walk this every step of the way and follow up. Every single meeting you have, say, okay, let's decide what our next steps are and when we are following up. So always have a next step and a date. Otherwise, life gets so busy and complicated. It's really easy to let this fall to the back burner because it's invisible. So if you're going to step up, own it, be very professional. Nobody wants to play with a jerk, right? Be the kind of person that you would want to work with on an issue like that and bring that positive energy to your town and to your schools.
Okay, next question. If anyone uses MoCA, M-O-C-A adapters to connect your device to a cable outlet instead of directly to the router, does MoCA adapter emit radiation? Also, Jeremy Johnson says that we have to use shielded Ethernet adapters and low band routers, but who sells those? Low band routers may be off the market.
I would recommend that you go back to Jeremy Johnson's website. It's called EMF Analysis, and he has a page on there with recommended products, and you can probably find them there. Jeremy also does consultations. He charges by, I think, like 15-minute, half-hour increments, which I respect that because so many of us walked away from our careers to help others learn, and we still need to feed our families too. And he's very good, and he will make your time very worthwhile, and he can give you very specific answers as far as products go. And there's also a company called Less EMF. If you go to Less EMF, those are really good people too, and they sell products for shielding and other options that you may be interested in.
Okay, next up, please explain if you put a guard on the smart meter, how the company does distance reading. Also, the meter emits it to the house. So to put a shield on the wall, these 2 things will increase radiation in the meter.
So again, best to work with a professional like a building biologist. So the shield over the meter is mesh, and it blocks a high percentage of the radiation, like 95, 99%, which allows just enough of the radiation to get out to connect. Like in my town, our readings are no longer done by a person who walks the neighborhood. Now they have a truck drive by, they point their reader, their sensor to my device from the street, and it picks up the signal. So it's shielding most of the radiation. And yes, you're right, it can also be transmitting into the house off the back side of the radiator, the antenna inside that device. And so shielding might be an important option for you if you're sensitive to that electric or magnetic field or the radio frequency radiation. I do know some people who've had to sell their homes and move because there was no option to put an analog meter back on. Some states, some communities are lucky that their energy company does allow an opt-out. Sometimes they will charge you to get the analog meter back, and then they will charge you a monthly fee to get a manual reading. We need to bring that a little more up to date. Everybody should have an option to opt out until we actually hardwire these meters to our homes. But places like Vermont, they have a no fee opt out, because you shouldn't be penalizing somebody who wants to protect their health and assessing a tariff or a tax for simply trying to have safety in their own home. So there's a lot of work to be done on that front. But literally, if you're sick and if those smart meters make you sick, you either need to remediate if you can. If it can't be remediated, you need to get out of there.
All right, next question. I'd like to know if a town's zoning will supersede state level restrictions. For example, if New Hampshire House Bill 1644 is passed. I don't know.
We shall see. It's never happened. We've never had a law to protect us before, but they'll have to flesh that out through the legal system. A state law may trump local, although Congress never intended to give all this authority to the wireless industry, to the telecom industry. And so there are things that can be put in the zoning bylaws. So I would suggest that if you have, like in one of the Massachusetts towns, there's a 3,000-foot setback from schools on any wireless communication facilities. And let's say the state of Massachusetts were to come up with a 500 meter or that 1,640-foot setback, your town would certainly still be able to keep their 3,000-foot setback, I should think, but I'm not a lawyer, so that's a legal question, and I hope we get to the point where we have to address that.
Here's another one. Why does Generation Zap say that there's no evidence of harm? Is it because it's older?
Yes, that film took 4 years to make. It was cut in 2017 and released to the public in 2018. And that was just one person saying that. They may not have done the deep dive into the science that was available at that point. But when that film was wrapped up in 2017, we didn't yet have the final report from the U.S. National Toxicology Program study that determined clear evidence of cancerous tumors and DNA damage. So the science has progressed on that front with cancer and many other biological fronts.
I don't see any other questions. So if somebody still has a question out there and you'd like to ask directly, feel free to do so.
I just want to make some clarifications about the smart meter. Hi, hello everybody. Thank you, Cece. It was great. Just to clarify, I spoke to National Grid. They said that so-called analog, they call it analog mechanical meters. The only difference now that the meter doesn't have the clock, you know, like looking like a clock type handle. Instead of the handle, there is a digital display. And they said that you can use your meter, I mean, your own EMF meter to measure, to prove that it does not emit any radiation. The only difference is instead of the handle, it's a digital, like it looks like a digital clock, and their worker still has to come to the house to read, you know, to read from this meter. But the only meters they provide now to exchange those smart meters is so-called analog meter with digital display. That's my clarification.
Goldie, thank you so much for joining us. You're very fortunate that you are in National Grid territory in Massachusetts. The other utility company here is Eversource. National Grid offers an opt-out. It's a fee-based opt-out, so you have to pay for it, unfortunately.
Yes.
But at least you have that option. And, you know, you covered it beautifully, because they may tell you one thing and we would like to trust, but we've always got to verify. And that's where having a radio frequency detection meter comes in handy. So thank you so much for sharing your experience.
Just to be clear, I don't have a meter yet. I ordered it. I'm waiting in the mail. But they told me you can go with your meter and measure. They told me. I don't.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, hopefully they just pull the RF antenna out of it. And I hope that's truly what you find. So keep us posted, Goldie. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Hi, Cece. This is Alicia. Thank you for your emails as I try to fight to get Wi-Fi out of my son's school. I bring this issue to other family members like my brother, and I crafted a letter to be able to send to the parents. And so I thought I'd try it out on the skeptics first to see what they'd say. But, you know, it's a really hard sell to get people to give up their cell phones and Wi-Fi.
Yeah, well, let's start the conversation with, we love our technology and we can have everything we need. We just need to reassess how we're accessing it and understand that it comes with very serious risks, because, you know, like I said, you can hardwire a cell phone when you're not on the go, right? I mean, at home, it's not rocket science. You can forward your phone calls to a landline. We have solutions for all of it. So we want to give them reassurance after reassurance that we're not going to take their toys, but we want them to know there are serious risks. And here's what you can do if you choose. But as far as our children are concerned, we are morally obliged to make sure that we create safe environments for them. So, and you're right, you know, that's such a common response when we open this conversation is, oh, we're all going to die anyway, or, oh, no, it's fine. Look, the FCC says it's fine. You know, we know how to counter that with facts. And it's about planting seeds. Some people will get it right away and be like, what the heck? What do I need to do? Others will be like, we're all going to die anyway. And I say to them, you don't want to die this way. If you've ever known anybody with microwave sickness or who got a brain tumor from their cell phone or the breast tumors, this is not how you would choose, because your life is going to become all about the next medical appointment, lining up friends and family to bring you your meals, to take care of your pets, to take care of your children while you and your hopefully caring partner are getting you off to these appointments. It becomes a living nightmare. So it is a common first reaction to just kind of blow this off. So we be patient, we continue to plant seeds, and eventually good people will use their common sense. Some people will never change. Keep moving on. Quit talking to those people, right? Don't waste your energy.
Okay.
But then they may hear about it from somebody else down the road and go, oh, you know, someone else was talking about this. And then they may tune in. So don't take it personally. You are the only person you can control. All we can do is do our best to provide information in a safe, non-threatening way and invite people into the conversation and hope they bite.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
And good luck. And like I said, I can be brought in to help with these conversations. In Massachusetts or Connecticut, you know, the states that are around me, I don't mind driving, and we could watch Generation Zap together with a room full of people, and then we can do this kind of Q&A afterwards. And then you don't have to be the person who has to feel like you got to know it all, right? So
Cece
I
did
can
that
help.
for me. She came to New Hampshire twice for me. I held it in a library and then in a middle school.
Yeah.
And Cece was there for both.
And I love doing that. I love getting out. I miss people. So yeah, and I'd love to do 10 events a month. That's kind of a little goal I've just planted in my mind. I want to do 10 events a month, so help me.
If you don't mind, can I ask, because you tell the story of how you wanted technology in the schools for your children, and so you ran these fundraisers to gain money for the technology, but I don't, you said that you got the sign in the classrooms, but did they turn off, did they hardwire the technology?
They did not. They are waiting for higher authorities to tell them what to do. So I went to my senator and we wrote a bill. I went to our Department of Education and I have presented at the state level. I've met with people at the state level. We've met with our Executive Office of Health and Human Services. But I think a lot of people are deep in bed with industry right now. So that's why if I had to do it over again, I would have educated everybody around me first and built the grassroots base where we are not going to back down. Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Don't go it alone.
Yeah. Because even that I watched Generation Zapped, and even the LA County Unified School District, they never went wired.
No, they reduced their exposures, but the industry got into the core curriculum and they talked everybody into using these tablets for the core curriculum testing. And so they have a whole school blown up with radiation while all these kids are doing all the testing. And I know teachers who got disabled when that core curriculum testing came in. So it's bad, but it's us, it's you and I who have the power to change this, right?
Thank you.
Yeah. Good luck. Let me know how I can help.
I'll be in touch.
Okay.
Geraldine has her hand up.
Oh, yes. Hi. Yeah, I was just reading the article by Jonathan Mirren and the
Mhm.
Greenfield Recorder under the opinion page, big article. And he talks about, this, it says, did you see it, Cece?
Yeah. In fact, I might have it up already at Massachusetts for Safe Technology on our news page. I try to post everything that we learn about in Massachusetts that gets published where we're moving the needle towards safe technology. And John has done a number of articles, and I know I've got a bunch of them up there, but I think I posted one last week of his.
Yeah, he was on one of your Zoom meetings
Yeah.
few months back. He was excellent.
Yeah.
And
So
it says the Safe Cell Tower Show returns to Buckland. That's the
yeah, I
title.
do have that one up at on our
Okay,
website.
it's on the opinion page. Is that free to post that on the opinion
Mhm.
page? Free?
Absolutely.
'Cause this is a
Absolutely.
huge article.
It
Huge.
is. And so Jonathan Mirren is a playwright and a performing artist. He got his MBA from Boston University. And he and his wife, his wife is very electromagnetically ill.
Yes.
And they have a little boy. And so they use their art form to help get information out to the public. And first they did a family play called Innocenzo about a clown who became electromagnetically ill. And, they talk about the waves and they use ribbons and stuff to illustrate it and get the little kids involved. But Godliev is not able to leave her home easily enough anymore to do that performance. So now they have come up with a one-person performance that Jonathan has done. And he was scheduled to do the world premiere at the Co-Festival this year. And then with the pandemic, they couldn't do their live performances. And so he had to completely remaster this performance that he calls Canary in a Gold Mine, meaning these sick people are the canaries in the gold mine that is the wireless industry. And so John redid this to deliver it in a medium that could be done online. And I think he did a brilliant job of telling his family's story through, really good theatrical tools that he has. And that is now available for anybody to watch and to learn from as well. And then he's done some Q&A sessions with many of the world's leading doctors and scientists that are also available on his website. And his website is called the PT Theater Company. It's PITI. And anybody can go out to the PT Theater Company, or if you want to go to Massachusetts for Safe Technology on our events page, I've got a link to that as well. Okay. All right. Other questions or comments or success stories that you want to share? Okay, everybody. We're so grateful you gave us 2 hours of your time. Oh, Laureen, go ahead.
Um, I guess I'm not muted. I'm from Alberta, Canada, and I saw you on Children's Health Defense
Oh, good.
conversation you were having with Mary, I believe.
Mhm.
And I was so inspired by you. I'm getting tears.
Oh,
Thank you. Thank you for the work you're doing. I have been successful. That's why I wanted to share my success story. I have hardwired my iPhone.
Yay.
And I'm in I wanted to hear you again because I need to hardwire all my devices, and I lead a small group called the Center for Universal Enlightenment every Sunday, and I want to share this information with them because not many people are very aware of what's going on. I've known it for a long time, but what I love about what you do, Cece, and who you work with is you make it practical and you give us the steps of what to do. Before, I'm just thinking, oh, I have to buy this thing and stick it on my body or stick it in my pocket, or I need a Faraday bag, or like you just even starting with hardwiring things first off, and then getting away from all of it and turning the modem off at night and stuff like that. It's just all the little steps have been so helpful. And so thank you so much from
Oh,
a
Lori, thank you
Canadian
so
gal.
much for sharing that feedback, because we do this day in and day out, and we never know if it's falling on deaf ears, but to know
Oh,
that
no.
you're living in a safer environment as you take your baby steps one by one.
Yeah.
It can be overwhelming, but when you
It
just
is.
say, what's the one thing I can do today?
One little thing. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And then
And I
before
did
you
it. I'm on my cell phone and the little things going, blah, 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 blah. All the colors are coming out. I'm like, and it's on, and it's off the Wi-Fi and off the data. And it's just like, that's only my first step. The rest is coming, but, and I want to help other people, and not many people know here. So,
Yes.
thank
So
you
by
for
all
what
means,
you do.
feel free to take the invitation for our webinars and give them to the folks in the group. And I love that you're already thinking beyond yourself and how you can share that. And just know it's not going to be everybody's cup of tea.
No.
Right. But because you're already affiliated with a pretty tuned in group,
Yeah, most of
they
us
will
are.
probably take it to heart and start
Many are.
sensing again. And
Many
so
are.
thank you. This is exactly the ripple effect we pray for.
Namaste, and thank you so much from Canada.
Oh, namaste. We honor your spirit. Thank you.
Beautiful.
Okay.
And my timing wasn't so good. I'm on Mountain Standard, so I missed the whole thing except this part, but it's meant to be that I just got to say that to you. And I will review the 2 hours, and I know all the answers will be there for me. So
Yeah, and
thank
come
you,
back
honey.
as many times as you want. I have watched that film Generation Zapped because I've done screenings in many libraries. We did a screening down at the National Institutes of Health when we were there. We did a screening at our state house, in schools. So I still learn something every time I watch that. And I've almost got the whole script memorized. But
Well, maybe
yeah,
I'll do that. I'll have them watch my group. I'll ask my group we'll watch that together, and then we'll watch the webinar. And then, if we have questions, we'll get to you.
perfect. Thank you so much. You have a wonderful evening, and thanks for joining us from Canada.
You too, honey. You too. Take care,
right.
everybody. Thank you.
Bye.
Okay. All right. Any other questions from those who have stuck it out with us?
Cece, I would just like to add, for those who are struggling with family members or friends, thinking you're crazy or extreme because, everybody would have made sure it was okay. I don't know who they are, but we know they're not. And I just wanted to give hope because, as Cece knows, I had adult children, not both of them, I won't name which, but would try to sort of trick me and tell me their phone was off, which of course I could feel it. And they were surprised when I could feel it. And then it took a bit. And then my daughter lives close by and went from having a Google everything tech home to completely hardwired. It's amazing the turnaround within 2 years or a year and a half. So, and she is one of the biggest supporters. So I just want you to know, all you can do is present the information, and when someone is ready to hear it, then you will be surprised. Miracles happen.
Mhm.
When the learner is ready, the teacher will
Yes.
appear.
Yes.
Isn't it true? And I have to,
Yes.
just to tag on what you said, Deb, I read, was it Cece that said this or somebody else that said the remote phones are the worst, some of the worst,
Yes.
because they're always seeking for
Mhm.
the thingamajigger. That's the technical term. And and I got rid of my what do you call those, remote phones?
Yeah, the decked
And
cordless phone.
cordless phones. Yes, there's another name for them, but anyway. So now I have all plugger inner phones, like all the old fashioned kind, and
Mhm.
they ring different and they have no caller ID or anything. So I just pick them up and I don't know who's going to be there. It's just the darndest thing though. I feel like I'm going back to my, my upbringing a bit, and it's wonderful. It's just wonderful. And they're $5 on Marketplace or free. People are
Mm.
giving them away. So
Oh my God. Yeah, right. Yard sales. You find them. I
Yeah,
found a
yeah.
whole box of Ethernet cables at a flea market. The person was flying out of the country the next day, moving, and they had free written on this box. And it was like a gold mine for me, right? I'm like, woohoo, I just absconded with a whole box of
That's
Ethernet cables.
awesome.
Yeah.
Cece,
Hey.
I wonder about these though. These ones,
Yeah, the office phones, you'd have to measure it.
Oh, okay. And that's the other thing I was going to say to what Deb said. You held up on that thing I watched, you held up that little meter gizmo.
Mhm.
When you took your phone off airport mode and then you measured from 5 to 250,000 or something like that. Yeah. And as I recall, there's a gal, somebody at a university in
Dr. Magda Havis.
Eastern Ontario. I want to do that. And then you get a discount on your gizmo. And I want to get that.
Yeah,
and
I have a slide. I know you weren't able to join us at the beginning, but on one of my slides that you'll get, you'll see Dr. Havis's Global EMF Monitoring Project and a link to her website. Or you can just go to Global EMF Monitoring and you don't have to wait.
Cece, did you speak to VPNs?
No, virtual private networks.
Love you.
So long as they're hardwired into your computer.
Okay.
That's
my girlfriend's got a VPN on her phone, so they can't track her.
Oh.
Am I calling it the wrong thing?
No, you might be. It's just not something I personally use, but keep asking, when you reach out to others, ask, talk to the building biologists and stuff, or other people with electromagnetic sensitivities they may know.
Well, I think that goes into the security and safety and monitoring of all the humans kind of thing.
Yeah.
Which is another conversation.
Yeah, that's another conversation. Right now, we focus primarily on the biological impacts.
Okay, good.
There may well be other things going on, but that's not what this space is for.
And that's just fine. I'm going all different directions.
No, it's common sense, isn't it? Listen, I see that Nina Anderson is with us. Nina, are you able to unmute and come on for a moment?
Yeah, there I am.
So this is one of my heroes, Nina Anderson out of Sheffield, Massachusetts, has been working on this issue for many years. And if you look at her picture there in the background, she's actually a retired corporate pilot. And that's some instrumentation behind her there. Nina and others were the ones who helped to bring me out for some education sessions recently in Hillsdale, New York. And they did a lovely potluck supper out there, and it was farm country. So a lot of people brought all these wonderful organic dishes to eat. And then we went inside and did a screening of Generation Zapped. And then I was able to bring people up to date with what's happened since that film was released. And so, Nina, a big shout out to you for all the incredible work that you've done. And I was in between nonprofits with Massachusetts for Safe Technology. We lost somebody during COVID that had been a fiscal agent for me. So Nina has had a nonprofit called SAFE, Scientific Alliance for Education, that she's had registered for years. And she just so very graciously adopted me in as a project for Massachusetts for Safe Technology under her nonprofit. And Nina, I just wanted to extend my gratitude. That makes my life so much easier. But I also wanted to see if you want to speak for a moment, because you and a colleague just came out with an incredible report for airline pilots, an article. Do you want to tell us about that?
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we can hear you just fine.
Okay, I can put the video on. I just got home late from work, so I'm trying to eat dinner, but let me see if I can get the video going so you can see
That's
it. There's
great.
Yeah, I worked, there was a professional pilot magazine which goes out to all the corporate pilots and others, but they actually wrote an article on how the 5G is affecting the radar altimeters in the airplane, because if you know they're not geared to protect themselves from that. So if you're shooting an approach and you get close to ground, the radar altimeter goes bye-bye, you know, you might hit something. So they had this whole article on how to fix the radar altimeter and what to do to shield it and everything. So I called them and I said, hey, you know, what about the brain? You know, you're doing this great instrument, but you know, what about the brain and the pilots, you know, going on vacation? So they, this guy Owen, who was a writer for them, he agreed to publish the article. So I wrote it for him, and he edited it, and we put it out, and it basically told a whole lot of things about what happens cognitively to the brain when you're getting 5G. We're specifically talking about 5G, but we also put some stuff in there on testing and things like that. It's been happened with 4G, and how if you use a cell phone, say 15 minutes before you take off, you put it next to your head, and you have an emergency on takeoff, your brain is half behind the 8 ball. So, and this has been proven. So that's why, you know, one of the things we're trying to tell people and all that kind of stuff. So it's really interesting that they published it, knowing corporations have a bazillion electronics in their airplanes all the time. So that was really good. So we can use that to sort of break the ice and tell people that, you know, here it is, you know, that it's definitely a professional organization really has admitted that it could affect the brain and your cognitive abilities to perform.
Yeah, it was fascinating to read that article, because you pulled up some statistics about the number of plane crashes and equipment losses that may be attributed to this.
Yeah, it is amazing. You know, I mean, just the radar altimeter, but you know, pilots, when they're in a stressful situation, if they're really under the gun with, you know, with even 4G and everything, all the electronics in the airplane, sometimes they make wrong decisions, and it's basically because the brain doesn't send the signal from here to there, and they can't process the right thing. So and you know, you have a boatload of people behind you that are depending on you. That's not really a good thing.
Right.
The other thing I wanted to mention, Cece, is I did have a link to PayPal. I put on the website today. So if anybody wants to give us a buck, they can do it through PayPal now.
Excellent. And I will take that and put it up on the footer of Massachusetts for Safe Technology as well. So thank you. You were so gracious to take me in, and then to go find out how to do the PayPal part of it for people who don't want to just send in a check to support our work. And I wanted to let people know that Nina's article is out at Massachusetts for Safe Technology on the news page. It's excellent. And again, another highly credible resource to share with others who may be dubious about this issue. So Nina, thank you. And thank you for letting me put you on the spot tonight, and for everything that you continue to do for our world. We're so grateful.
Yeah, you're the big person that's plowing the fields for us. So I'm really glad that you came on board with us.
I don't know. I'm standing on your shoulders because you got in this game way before I did.
Well, we've been doing this for 13 years, back to fighting cell towers a long time ago. So, you know, we get kind of tired though.
We do. There are definitely days where we want to give up, but then we get some movement of the needle towards safe technology, and it re-inspires us. So we just do what we can and hope that it ripples out and that others pick up the ball and run with it where they are, because there's no cavalry coming. It's all up to us to keep this work going. So, all right. Thank you so much, everybody. We are so grateful for your time tonight. Feel free to share the video and the slides when we make them available. And if you're not already directly on my mailing list, please join us out at Massachusetts for Safe Technology, and then you'll get updates and announcements for when we have new events coming up. So, all right, everybody. Thank you again. And thank you to Deb for sticking with us yet again. And we will see you next time.
Bye.
Good night,
Thank you.
everybody. Bye-bye.
Thanks so much.
Thank you so much.